want to go back or watch past episodes, everything should be there. I am a real estate broker in Los Angeles, California, building a national team of probate experts around the country. And when I do this, I don't sell any coaching, don't sell any data. I'm really here because I need this. We need to work together, share best practices, encourage each other, learn together, interview guests to help us be better at our job, whether you be a real estate agent or investor, wholesaler or attorney or a petitioner with questions. We want to get together and share those good practices, encourage each other so we all can make more money and all can build more wealth. If you're on this free resource, I have a Facebook group called Probate Experts. You're welcome to join there, no cost. And we post events there, material there, questions get answered for real estate agents. There's leads that come in there. People look to network from across the country. We have over 1,100, maybe 1,200 members in that group. Love to have you join there. And if you register for the call, now you can watch this on YouTube or Facebook, but if you want to participate, come into the Zoom. You register at probateweekly.com, and then you'll get reminders that allow you to come in live in the Zoom call, ask questions, participate in the chat box. And so love to have you do that. If you're on the call, we'd love to have you participate. Turn on your camera, ask questions, unmute yourself, participate in the chat box, promote yourself. Feel free to put your company information so other people around the country can refer business to you, or you can work with them as well. And then if we send an email, you can sign up and subscribe with a calendar invite, or if on YouTube, you can subscribe there, hit notifications, and get notified every week when we do new calls and or other content. So love to have you guys participate. And then each week we try to bring in guests most of the time. It's not always guests, sometimes it's content, depending on things go. And sometimes the guests have to cancel at the last minute. I'm looking for Bo. If you're there, anytime, raise your hand or hit the chat box and I'll unmute you. But I'm looking under your name. I don't see you unless you're hiding under iPhone. I don't see anybody there. So if you are there, Bo, if you're there, come in and raise your hand. And I know Jess is looking for you as well. So a couple housekeeping things. We do try to have guests every week. Last week, though, I talked about the 11 ways to get listings. And then on my YouTube channel, I also have recordings, 11 ways to make sales, which is for real estate agents or investor wholesalers, and also 11 ways to make money, different businesses you can do within the probate space. Probate's a huge industry of real estate. Real estate itself is huge, and probate covers a huge swath of that business. So we want to make sure that we cover it broadly. And I think the other thing I want to tell people is sometimes the topic we have might not be straight up what you're involved with, but the principles are the same. And the key to being an expert, and I think it's important, if you want to do more business, be better at what you do, create more value for your customers. And one way to do that is just to know more than the competition. If you learn more, you're able to give your clients a different perspective or think of a different strategy. You know, I see companies that market coaching and data and marketing for probate, and what works, and I got to tell you, what works in some markets don't work in other areas. The type of marketing that works in more, semi-rural, suburban areas doesn't work in a more competitive market like Los Angeles, and vice versa. And so my goal of exposing myself, most importantly, and all of you to this call is to learn those differences and look for similarities and approach that business so we can make more money and build our income. So just so I know who we're talking to today, if you want to put in the chat box, if you're primarily a real estate agent or investor or wholesaler or vendor, whatever your business is, or if you're an attorney, put that in the chat box so we know who we have here today. Make sure we ask the right questions and get to you on that. I see some realtors. Hey, Gloria, how are you? Tashia Flukas, welcome. I see a realtor. So make sure you put in there if you're a real estate agent. I understand some people are both agents and investors or vice versa, but put the one that you primarily focus on a daily basis so we make sure this and other content we do is oriented towards that. Great. And also you're going to put what city and state you're from. Love to get referrals going back and forth. So realtor in your city and state, or investor, city or state. The Facebook group is called Probate Experts. Probate Experts. In fact, I'll go in and I'll put the link to that here in the chat box. So you guys just want to click on it and join in. Love to have you join. And again, it's just really a place to hang out, share ideas. We get leads there all the time. And from all around the country. In fact, from the UK as well. We have 1,200 members. I just started this about 3 days ago. So it's been really exploding in popularity. And it always surprises me how many people ask questions there about leads, what I call legitimate leads in different market areas that can be helpful. Okay, Let me go through and ask a couple questions. Looking for our guest today, Boe, and if he's on, if you could hit the chat box, or Jesse, if you could point him out to me, that would be great. But until we get there, I just want to go through the list of some questions. We can talk about the most common questions I get are the ones that have come up most recently. One I get, and I asked this question actually as well in the chat box, is where do you get data from, right? Where do you get the information to market the business? And that question really is interesting because some of the people who are here are because they were approached by a data company or a company who makes their money selling data, and they get into business that way. And that the implication is the best way is the way they're going to teach you how to use their source. The problem is that sometimes the data company, they're not real estate brokers. They're not using the data. And I can tell you, I don't, for example, cold call petitioners, family members or executives, administrators. I don't do that. I did when I started, but I don't today. But I still use the data all the time to analyze the data, filing dates, who the attorneys are, which attorneys I want to target, which ones, if I know they're brand new, then I know they're not going to be as experienced as other people. So it's really important to know what you need for your market. And there's different data sources in every area. On my website, which is the LAProbateExpert.com, on the far right side, I'll put the link into the chat box. On the far right side, I have probate resources. And if you go there, I have a list of all the different data sources that I'm aware of. And I get asked all the time. Now, I'm not selling this. I'd like to be a resource that has all of them. And if you have particular feedback on one, let me know. In fact, somebody did introduce me to a source that I knew about, J&J Services, but I didn't know they used them. And I'm actually having an interview set up with the proprietor. And I've interviewed some of the owners to try to promote the availability where it's appropriate for agents for you guys to use. And if it's not good, I'll tell you as well. So I've used a lot of them. In some counties, there's limited resources, or you have to go to the county office. But know that if you have to go to the county office, so does your competition. And so if you do that better, faster, more efficiently than the competition, you win. And so sometimes that obstacle becomes the opportunity for people in their business. So where do you get data? How do you get data is a constant topic. And again, if any of you use a particular data source that you like or don't like, put in the chat box. If I'm calling you, if you want to talk a little bit about it and share with everybody else what you're doing with it. And I really appreciate all the people reaching out from around the country. Deborah Morton from Marietta, Georgia, Cobb County. I'm not sure, is that near Athens? Is Athens near, or is that near Atlanta? Okay. So 5 listings coming. Deborah Morton killing it in her probate business. Good job. We've got a question here. What's needed to take on a probate sale from BC? Information or questions you need to ask the lawyer. BC, I don't know if you want to unmute and give me a little more. I'm not sure what you mean by take on a probate sale. Do you mean what does it take to list the property? Or what does it mean? Are you asking what you need to do in order to do it properly? Or what's your question?
Yeah, question pretty much is what is needed. I have a lead, a referral with a couple. It's a probate sale, but it would be my first probate sale that I'd ever do. So a little bit nervous taking it on, but just kind of what would be needed, or what do I need to prepare so that I'm a little bit more knowledgeable in that field.
Sure. What state is the property in?
California, Los Angeles.
Okay. And are you in LA?
Yeah.
You're an agent or investor?
Agent.
Oh, good. What company are you with?
Keller Williams, Los Feliz.
Okay, very nice. So what I'd recommend for a new agent, if you've never done one, for a listing, I would find a local agent to partner with your first deal. And the reason I say that is, I get asked this a lot, and in fact, on the call, I have somebody from my team. They're on my team, and I'll help them as much as I can. And I get people call me outside, and it's there's a lot of details, and I can't do an individual training class on everything it takes to do a probate sale. But if you find the right partner to co-list with the first listing, and you pay attention, review the paperwork, watch the process, you'll learn a lot the first time. Yeah, you give away some of the commission, not all of it. You're also going to give away some of the work, theoretically. And so I know in your area, I know some people that I can recommend. If you want to text me offline, I'd be glad to give you a name or two that might help you. But that's what I do. I'm with EXP Realty, and I've had agents from around the state. I have a listing in Tehama County, California. I've sold in Oakland. I sold in 9 counties last year with my company co-listing. So I would say my best recommendation is find an agent to co-list, do it 50-50, learn from them, or maybe they'll want a different split. That's between you and them. But I would recommend that because there's a lot to do. The other thing I would say, first thing to a realtor, is at least print out the probate purchase addendum, because I think if you have to read that. If you list the property, that's going to come in with your offer, and read the probate listing addendum. In California, we have those 2 forms. At least read there you go. Read them and understand the words. You should know everything in those forms. If you have questions after that, that's one thing. But so often I get agents will call me up with questions, and they even know there's such a form. And so there is such a form. We live in a great time for newer agents. You can go into, we use SkySlope or Zip Forms and put in the word probate, and whatever forms are needed are right there for you to look at, and make sure you print them out and read them. So good job, BC, on that. And then I would say, you can learn and give it a try. It depends on who the customer is. If the customer is willing to give you some extra elbow room to work on it, but probate's going to be very particular. Mistakes can cost a lot of money, especially if there's, feuding family members. So I might be careful, and I would recommend strongly to co-list your first one with somebody. Does that help a little bit? Fantastic. Okay, good. Good luck. Well, welcome to the call. Thanks so much. Okay, and look at that. And Mark Pedroza gets free leads. That's because I saw that, Mark, that in Sacramento County, they publish it online free. Good job. So Sacramento County, we should all move to Sacramento County and compete with Mark Pedroza, I guess. And Matt, listen, one today that's been in probate for a year. Matt, that's pretty good. I will say I have one in escrow that in LA, the probate case numbers start with the last 2 digits of the year. And my case starts with 16. So this is a probate case that was filed in 2016. We still haven't closed the escrow. We're working on that. Okay, Jonah, I see your hand up. Let's get you unmuted and bring you in. How can I help you?
Yeah, my question to you is the following. I signed up for probate money with Paul Horn, and I started to get the leads for the petitioner and everything. I know you mentioned earlier that you don't cold call the petitioners anymore, but my question is, when I do make a cold call to a petitioner, what do I say to them? Because I know it's not a traditional, it's not like a typical residential lead. They're a close, someone has died, they're going through a tough time, so I'm wondering what I say. I'm just here to help, or
So I would direct you to website Probate Mastery, who was my first coach in probate, and he has on there kind of what to say and how to say it. And beyond that, I would say you don't need to treat them different. They're at least out of their grief enough to have filed a probate case with their county. They filled out the forms, they wrote a check, they did that work. And so in my experience, they're pretty much they're anxious to do something. They did it for a reason, right? There's a saying, from the movie Glenn Ross, they walked on the showroom floor for a reason. And you need to find what that reason is. And so I would say call them without regard to grief. I would just say, hey, John, it's Bill Gross. I'm a real estate agent in Los Angeles, specializing in helping probate families like you. I see you filed a probate. I just kind of see how I can be of assistance to you.
Okay.
And I think if you come from that and you sound like a neighbor offering help, that will work for you. If you sound like I'm not sure who that noise is. Let's see here. If you sound like a telemarketer, you're gonna have a problem. And so I would definitely approach for that direction. Okay.
Okay.
To be continued. It's a conversation you have for a while. Also, I would go in the Probate Mastery Facebook group or my Probate Expert Facebook group. Okay.
Okay. Thank you.
Great. Thanks, Jonah. I see we have our special guest from. I got some feedback here. I don't know if it's on your end. Let's see here. Where are we having some feedback problems? We mute Jonah. That should do it. Okay, good. So from Houston, Texas, Houston native, undergraduate in Texas, law school in Texas, runs a law firm in Texas, Boe Bowen. Bo, welcome to our call.
Hello, thank you for having me. Pleasure to be here.
And Bo is the managing attorney of the Bowen Law Firm, PLLC. I don't know what the PLLC stands for. I'm sure it's very important and very legalistic to protect him from lawsuits, as attorneys are known to do. He's the managing attorney of a law firm that, among other things, does probate. I've interviewed him on my YouTube channel, and it's great to have you back, Bo. Thanks so much for joining us today.
My pleasure. Just so you know, PLLC stands for Professional Limited Liability Company. It's just another version of an LLC.
Got it. But it's special for professionals like attorneys.
Yes, sir.
Yeah. Yeah. I would say that the legal system is written by attorneys for attorneys. So if you ever wonder how things work, that's why. So, Bo, tell us a little bit about how did you get into the practice of law? What prompted you to get there? And then tell us about your practice as it relates to probate specifics.
Yes, sir. Well, oddly enough, I've wanted to be an attorney since I was knee high to a duck, is what I like to say. I literally dressed in my Sunday's best suit, had a backgammon case, and went trick-or-treating as an attorney. Wow. So it's been a dream since as long as I can remember. What sparked it, I don't know of any particular instance. It's just something I've always wanted to do. And
text message from Dad. Stop watching porn upstairs.
There we go. We'll get rid of that. Goodbye, Arthur.
Oh,
go ahead.
Oh, no worries. And once I completed, military helped me get money for school. I went through the whole process and I developed a law firm. Like most who create a law firm, you do what is called door law. What comes through the door, you tend to offer because you got to, make some money. Well, and then as it evolved, I found there's a definitely need in my community for a good probate and estate planning attorney. So of course we offer that, and of course family law, among other things. But a good half of the practice is probate and estate planning.
Because the crossover, it seems like probate covers into so many different areas, or leaks into so many different areas. It kind of drives you into those practices. And the firm is you, and you have an associate, Lena, who I've also interviewed. In fact, we had fun with her a few months ago, and she's going to come back again down the road. So how do you know much about probate outside of Texas? How would you describe Texas's probate process versus other states?
I don't know as much from the other states, to be fair, other than listening to you talk and the things we went over between ourselves. I pretty much know Texas. Any and all of my experiences has been Texas. So I'm limited in that regard. I have no knowledge of outside of it.
Okay. So let's talk about the Texas process then. In California, we have kind of two tracks of probate. We have full authority, limited authority. Full authority would typically be a very limited oversight by the court. There's rules and procedures, but pretty much the petitioner can sell the property. They might file and get, put people on notice. And then limit authority is where the court actually has to approve the sale. Do you have similar procedures in Texas?
Sort of. They're not going to just go and sell the property unless they have like a transfer on death deed or it's been put into a trust. Typically, you're going to have to go through probate, get it appointed. I say appointed. And if you don't have a will, then they're going to appoint someone. Then you get a different name, an administrator or administratrix, depending if you're male or female. If you had a will, then you'd be having an executor or executrix. Once that person is normally admitted the will to probate, we have that little hearing. They get their letters of testamentary if they have a will, letters of administration if they don't. Then they basically, that person, they're stepping into their shoes. At that point, they're going to be able to sell property and do everything else that needs to be done. Unfortunately, because of COVID and everything else, that just made the whole process even further back. So before we're at least an 8-month process that things are zooming through, you go ahead and add 3 months to that now. Now, just trying to get a hearing right now, it's going to take 3 months to get on the boards. It's not a hard process. It's just hard getting in front of the judge to get some of the stuff done. They're backed up.
So it's 3 months to get the initial petition approved to get letters where you're at. Once you're there, though,
it takes a little bit longer than that. First, we got to start the process. We got to get the client in, do all that fun stuff. Then we got to send out notices. Then, I'm sorry, I'm going to rephrase. Then we have to then set it for the hearing. Once we get that, that'll take at least 3 months, in my opinion.
Got it.
From there, 5 to another 8, depending on how many hiccups and what kind of creditors we got and that stuff. But it's not a difficult process, but it can be, especially when you have people contesting wills. Then it gets really crazy.
How long after the hearing, assuming all the paperwork matches up, does the court approve it and issue the letters? So if you have a hearing, let's say at day 90, When typically is your client going to get their letters of testamentary or administration?
That varies by court. Some are more efficient than others. Typically, sometimes we get them the same day. Others, it'll take up to a month sometimes to finally get them.
Yeah.
I believe they mail them out. This stuff gets lost in the mail too.
Yeah.
Usually a month or less. And then once they have that, we still got stuff we have to do, like publications. And we're still making our contacts with the known creditors and things like that. So that in and of itself is going to take at least another 120 days because of the timeline, assuming from the day of the publication on. And then after that, there's usually odds and ends. And we're fortunate in Texas, they'll normally let us do an affidavit instead of supplying an inventory, instead of making it public, everything people owned. Most courts will allow that, but you still have to do an inventory. You just don't make it public. I do like how Texas lets us do that.
So they get the letters, they get approved, they get the letters within a day to 30 days.
Yeah.
At what point can they actually enter into a contract to sell real estate and close? Now in California, once you have the letters, theoretically you can sell the property. There's a notice process you may or may not be able to waive. But theoretically, once you have the letters, you could close escrow within days or at most 3 weeks. How long would it be after letters before I could actually close escrow on a house? Maybe the money is kept in the probate, but at least the property is sold at that time.
In my humble opinion, as soon as you have that letter and the court has said you're the executor or executrix, you're that deceased person. You sell it that day, in my humble opinion. Rarely are they able to, but as soon as you have that authority, we'll act on it.
Right. So, in theoretically, if you had a contract kind of agreed to verbally ahead of time, you can execute it right away and get it done right away.
Yes, sir.
So that's
there's
the key.
Times we'll list it for sale, knowing the timeline to help, because there's times you want to sell. So there's times they do, but they also understand if this gets held up, you won't be able to sell it. You may get stuck. But that's a gamble they take, knowing the pros and cons.
Now, what happens if you have full authority, but one of the heirs objects for whatever reason? They just decide, hey, you're selling it too cheap. You're selling it to your friend. I don't think you're getting top dollar for it. How difficult is that a process to work around if you have full authority?
It'll take a minimum of 3 months to get the hearing to go forward, but in the end, the court will tell you that's usually not that big of an issue. And usually if it is, we can get the people to work together. We'll get a realtor in there. Let's get an evaluation, agree on a professional, and go with that number. And that usually will settle it. Most of these people don't want to waste the money going to court and fighting each other. They want that money for themselves.
Well, there's some that don't, though, right?
There are some that say, I'll cut my nose to spite my face. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah.
And it sucks when they're the executor or executrix. They get to use all the funds money to fight, and they're going to pick the most expensive attorney. There's some negatives to this process.
Does the executor or administrator get to pay themselves fees as well as attorney's fees? They pay the attorney, but they get.
Usually they don't. To be fair, I must say majority of the wills that I've seen that go through, they don't account for it. Mm-hmm. But I do see it occasionally. But they are allowed to if it's been allowed in the will. If the court appoints a person, that's a different question. And yes, they can. They'll normally get reasonable and necessary depending on what's going on.
What's a typical probate fee, using your firm? What's a typical case look like? And what's a typical fee for that kind of service?
Well, some people do it on a contingency. We don't do that. That seems more to be of a windfall. I like windfalls, but clients don't. So in an effort to make sure everything's on the up and up and fair, we typically just bill for what we do. And so if the case takes 12 hours, you pay for 12 hours. If it takes 120, you pay for 120. So that's what we do. And the rates vary depending on who's working on the case. We've always followed the concept of the most cost-effective approach. And I have a heck of a support staff that helps with that. Why do you want me to draft when I got a paralegal who can do it quicker and better than I can, and they're half the cost? Go with that. It's a win. So we do try to position that for our clients because, as you know, this whole world that we're in is exorbitant. Everything's expensive.
Yeah. So you must see people come to you, try it on their own, start on their own, got sideways. What's the most common mistake people make when they try to do this on their own?
Improper filings, don't give notices. In my opinion, just not doing the basic research. We have some fantastic resources here in Texas, like texaslawhelp.org. I send people there all the time. They can't afford an attorney, don't want to pay for one. It's a fantastic resource. Heck, it's made by the State Bar of Texas. They made my bar exam. They let me know if I can be an attorney in practice. I think they know what they're talking about, at least a little bit, right? So I send people there all the time.
They made you an attorney, Bo. I don't know how good they are. I'm sorry. You just set me up on that one. That was just too easy.
No worries.
No problem. So let's talk a little bit about, obviously a lot of people on this call, I would say the majority are probably real estate agents, and we have some investors. So let's talk a little about working with a real estate agent. What can a real estate agent do, if anything, to help you and or your firm be more productive to earn your support, your business?
Oh, for me, I always need to have a relationship with the person. I'm not going to refer you off of an one-off meeting. I prefer to have at least 1 or 2 lunches, get to know them. I'm going to do my own research as well. And I always leave them with the knowledge of knowing if we have issues, I'm going to call, I'll address it with you. If I keep getting issues, I can't keep referring people. It's literally that simple. I usually have a list of 3 to 5, and I don't usually go outside of that. Certain gaps I've got, we're good. Others, I'm still looking for good people in different areas of even the law. But I would encourage them not to just look at firms that do probate, also family law. I'm fortunate that I have more than Lena helping me, and 6 attorneys now. They offer a lot more than just the probate, but family law all the time we're having to sell houses. So another great area for the real estate market. And I've used them for both because someone's passed away. They're now wanting to get rid of the big house or wanting to give it to the kid. I need real estate people, but divorces even more so. I've used them in probate.
So look, this is meant to be participative. If you're on the call, we'd love to have you come on the Zoom call so you can raise your hand, ask questions. We also have people on Facebook and YouTube asking questions. And just real quick, I'll catch a couple of those. If you're on Facebook, we don't give out the Zoom link publicly for security reasons. Go to probateweekly.com and you register, and that will get you the Zoom link. And you're welcome to come in every week. And once you've registered, you'll get reminders if you want to come in weekly with a calendar invite and reminders and things like that. So again, we don't send the Zoom link if you're on Facebook, but you can go to probateweekly.com and register. What can you get from Sacramento for free? Somebody asked, that was the leads. If you look at the chat notes, Mark Pedroza in the Sacramento area, and he was explaining that online they offer those leads for free. A couple of Facebook users were noting that you were born to be an attorney, and so you got, Bo, you got a bunch of hearts and a lot of good shout outs as well. And one of the Facebook users asked about a particular case in Texas, which is great. We're glad to help. But I can't really get into the specifics here because I don't have your name and the details, and Bo can't see it. But in the Facebook group, Probate Experts, we do get people who post specific questions. And I do know Bo and Lena are both very active in that group and answering questions, particularly in the state of Texas. So if you have a particular question, I can't see who the user is, just says Facebook user in Texas, go into the Probate Experts group in Facebook, post that same question, and my guess is Bo or Lena would be glad to help you there to the extent they can help you. Okay, we got a couple of hands up as well. Let me see if we can get a couple people here on the Zoom call.
I just see a question that popped up. Okay. You want to go from the top? You want to go? How do you normally do it? I do see questions.
However you want to do it. Normally, attorneys aren't able to both walk and chew gum, but you're able to. Obviously, you're kind of a different attorney, Bo. That's what I liked about you from the beginning. So you can answer whatever questions you want.
I'll start at the first one I see, but some of these I don't know the answer to. And if I don't, I'll tell you I don't know. And some of these I bet you Lena would know when I don't. There is something you hit on earlier about the different processes in Cali versus here. We have something similar, what we call an independent and dependent administration. The independent means you get to basically do what you want once you get the permission to as the administrator or the executor, right? The other version is the dependent, like you were saying, everything has to get approved by the court. Oh, nightmare, very expensive. You want independent property.
Right.
So, independent administration. Does it make a big difference whether you're in an attorney state versus a title company? I don't understand that question.
So what that question means is in states, actually they're interchangeable. So some states use what they call attorney closings. Others use what they call title company or escrow closings. California is one of those. In reality, all that means is in California, we've taken a portion of the role of an attorney, that part where you can be an independent third party and hold money independently in a trust account. They've taken those laws and created an entity called an escrow officer or a title officer, and they play the role of a closing attorney. So in some states, you have a closing attorney, that person most similarly looks like an escrow officer or a title closing officer in other states. So they're somewhat interchangeable terms. The difference being that a real estate closing attorney is actually a full member of the bar typically and has other authorities, whereas the escrow officer or title only has that limited role, but they have the same powers within that limited role, if that makes sense.
That's a good question. Would that be like an HOA real estate or property attorney question? I don't know the answer to that. I'm even scared to hazard a guess.
No, when you sell your
I
house,
know-
for example, who do you make the deposit? Who gets the money? Do you take the money to a real estate attorney or to a
To
title
a title
company?
company. Well, every time we've
Okay,
done
so
it,
you guys
sent
are
to a title company.
So we call it title closing state or an escrow state, as opposed to that title company. Really, that person is acting in the law of Texas with a subset of the laws in other states that attorneys do, and they don't create that subset. That's all that really means.
And if I remember correctly, it's required by law to do the closing either at a title company, an attorney office, and there was one other location, if I remember right, they added on it. So that does that makes sense.
Yeah. Well, different in different states, some require face to face. In California, we don't. It's all done virtually now, and with escrows, which are much cheaper per hour, obviously. Though I will say the bigger escrow companies have attorneys on staff, because at the end of the day, there's understanding those rules and playing along with those rules and reading contracts, interpreting them. That's where you get into legal work. So in that sense, they make a difference if you're an attorney state or a title company state. Those are really the same thing. It's just that's just the process that the state uses to delegate those powers or authorities. Okay, let me bring in Jonah's got his hand up. Let me get you unmuted, Jonah, if you can, and go ahead and ask a question of Boe.
Yeah, I think my question is more so to you, Bill, but maybe both of you can answer this. Once I make a cold call to a petitioner and they agree to have me, represent them in the sale of the house, what do I do after that? Do I need to go get I assume I need to go get the letters and the proposed move to action and that type of thing?
But what he's saying is he's getting data from a data source that is getting files, probate filings. And the probate filing means, by definition, they filed for probate. They may have not gotten approved yet, but at least they filed. And so, John, the question then is, if they're approved and have authority, go ahead and list the property, according to the laws of your state on listing probate property. If they don't yet have authority, Boe just said, sometimes you can list the property, but that you had to be careful because they technically have the authority to do that legally. So Boe, I'm going to mute you, Jen, I can see you got some background. So Boe, let's talk a little bit about people who are filing for probate, have a real estate agent, they're very anxious to sell the property. In Texas, can they sign a listing agreement ahead of time? Is it binding, or what's the process in Texas?
Well, in my opinion, they can, and it will be binding, but they're taking a risk. It is better, in my opinion, best to wait until you get your letters in your hand. Because the court may say you can't do the job. There's all kinds of things that invalidate people, even though your name's on it. You're a felon, for example. You can't do it. I don't care if you're the only heir. You're stuck out. And hiccups do happen. It may take longer to get the letters.
Right.
You don't want to get stuck with the penalties by not having it available. And that's what you're doing.
Right.
So normally I would encourage people to wait, but I understand they got the bills coming in. They got to get rid of it. You got to make the decision what's best for them and their family at that time. And we're going to do our best to support them. But an ideal situation is you file first, we have our hearing, you get your letters. And then at that point, because now you're stepping into the shoes of that person, then go forward. I wouldn't do it.
Right.
I don't recommend doing it beforehand.
Right. And I think you're seeing that in the general case. I'm sure there's specific cases where there, financial hardships and such, where they want to, and also when the investor is the one who puts the money up for the legal fees and gets the process kicked off. So that happens too as well. So hopefully that helps, Jonah. Thanks for the question. Appreciate it. Jesse, I see your hand up. If you want to unmute yourself, and if you put your camera on, that'd be great. How can we help you? Jesse Williams. Hand up. There you go. No.
Can you hear me now?
You sure can. How you doing?
Yes, ma'am. We can hear you.
Okay, good. So I raised my hand earlier, so I don't know who this is for, but I'm an investor. So I drive around looking for properties that look like they're vacant.
We lost you, Jesse. You went back to mute.
I accidentally muted her. I hit the.
Oh, sorry.
Bill.
Sorry, Jesse. Go ahead.
Okay. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay. So I'm an investor. I ride around looking for properties that look like they're vacant. I found one. I did the research, found out that it's owned. It's owned by a couple, and the husband passed away about 6 months ago, but it's still in both of their names. So what is the next step for me? Because I'm I want to buy it from them, not list it for them. So what's the next step for me?
And Jesse, what state do you do business in?
Florida, Sebring, Florida.
Okay. So you have to understand, and this is a national call. The principles are the same in most states, but every state has specific laws that may vary. So, Bo, in Texas, who can file a probate if the property is abandoned and overgrown? Maybe it's a hazard of some sort. No creditor step forward, no heir step forward. Can investors step forward at least until somebody replaces them and file the probate and get the process started?
As a general rule, anyone who has an interest in the estate can initiate the probate process, even creditors. You don't need the lawn overgrown and all these other factors. That has no role. What boils down is, do you have an interest in the estate? If you have an interest in the estate, arguably you can initiate it. So in this situation, what I encourage people to do is simply write a letter to the house. You're always welcome to go by. You can pay them a visit. I recommend letters. Make sure you're still respectful of the timeline, but it's tough because you want to get in there before someone else does. I understand that.
Right.
Some states do have laws regarding when you can communicate and go after people. Also, like attorneys, we're not allowed to solicit. If I know they need me, I can't let them know I'm here. It's weird.
Right.
They got to come to me first. I don't want you to get in trouble inadvertently, and then also, if you have all those issues, I'd be checking the county records. I'm willing to bet they might be back on their taxes and such. Let them initiate foreclosure.
Yeah, I checked that they're not. So, but I don't know why. If it's been since February, shouldn't it have already gone to where it's just in the wife's name, or is it still okay in the timeline?
No, ma'am. Until someone goes and changes those documents with the Harris County Appraisal District for us, or Appraisal District, goes through the process, it's going to be in both their names. They could die and the kids get it. Sometimes this happens for generations. We make a lot more when they don't probate throughout, so it works for us, but not for them. No, as soon as they pass, they are supposed to probate, but in Texas, you can take up to 4 years.
Oh, so, wow. Okay.
And even after that, you can still probate. It just closes some of the doors you have in terms of options. In fact, they'll treat it like you don't have a will as a general rule after 4 years. But no, you got a 4-year gap, at least here in Texas. So I'm willing to bet 4 doesn't be roughly the same. Could be longer.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Just a couple two tricks I've used. If you look in public records, make sure where the property tax bill is being mailed to. Sometimes it's mailed to a remote address and there's a clue. Second, I would skip trace the decedents. You'll find sometimes that there's relatives on the file with names and phone numbers you call. Third, you can door knock around it. I did find some
relatives. Yeah, I did find some relatives. So I'll contact them.
They can file a probate as an heir. And of course, worst case, somebody steps in and says, I'm a closer heir and I'll take over. But now at least you have somebody who started the process. Right. You're driving the car, somebody else will have to step in and drive the rest of the way. But at least you get the process, at least in California, they can get the process started and you can help them do that and perhaps earn your way that way. Okay?
Yeah, I've done it before in a different deal. So I just wanted to see what your opinion was on it, both of you. Great. Okay, so thank you. Thank you very much.
Thanks so much. Thank you. Okay, Maisha Miller, hand up. Let me get you unmuted if I can.
Okay, can you hear me?
I can.
Hi. I tried to turn my camera on. It's not working on this computer. So like even when I do turn it on, it's just like a black screen. So sorry about that.
No problem.
But thanks so much for making yourself available to us as a resource. I myself, I'm a new, I don't even want to call myself, I'm new to investing. And I live in Los Angeles, California, so I can't yet sit with the big dogs just yet, but I'm trying to get started, and specifically with a multifamily home. And it's been, as you know, this market has been insane this past year. And also now, like the city of Los Angeles extending the eviction moratorium yet again. And so I'm just trying to get advice on in terms of the changes that have occurred within these past 2 to 3 months. What would you advise in terms of what to look for like first time home properties that you want to own or occupy and potentially have tenants as well?
So you're more asking from a real estate investor point of view, how would I find a property to live in, like a 2 to 4 unit.
Correct.
Right? Yeah. You know, that's a little beyond my scope. I'll be honest with you. I'm a real estate broker, and if you find it, I'll sell it for you. Or if you find a property you want to buy, I'll help you get it. But you're really asking some very good, detailed, I think you deserve a good answer on personal financial advice. And I think it depends on your plan and program on that. You know, I always feel like, you know, less you can spend on your personal life, the more you can invest in your business. And so I like house hacking. If you're single, especially, I don't know what your situation is.
And that's exactly what I'm trying to do, but it's just kind of hard because the prices, I mean, you know, the prices have dropped a little, not as much as I think a lot of us were expecting with the interest rates, but I think the other exactly, but I think the other part of it is just like this eviction moratorium making it extremely difficult to even come close to that when buying. So,
you know, I'd say, look, I'm glad to talk to you offline. If you want to call me individually, we can talk about it. But I think it requires a more personal information than you want to share on a call like this, to be honest, to get the right answer for you. In general, my advice for people is always, you know, live on as low as you can so you can put money into your business and be an investor and have more money to invest sooner. But without getting into your personal, I don't think we want to share online here those kind of details. Feel free to give me a call. I'm more glad to give you a little counseling on some ideas and some direction where you can go. Okay. And she muted herself, I think. Okay. Doris asked, and this I wanted to ask Boe this question: difference between a living will, I'm not sure if you mean living trust, but let's say living will. Is there such a thing as living will versus a will? Or what's the difference between a estate plan and just simply having a will? In California, I can tell you that, and this is the biggest misconception, wills get probated. A will gets executed in probate court. And so it's not a ticket out of probate court. It just is a different path in probate court than if you don't have a will. In Texas, does a will avoid probate, or does a will speed up the process?
There we go. Sorry, just trying to get the mute off. There's several questions in that one. Which one do you want me to field first? The will question and the living will, or the second part, does a will avoid probate?
Whatever you want. I'm not paying you both, so whatever you want to answer, I'm glad to take.
The first question, I believe, was, what's the difference between a living will and a will? That's a good question. Now, in most states call a living will, we call in Texas a directive to physicians. And this is simply a document to know when is it time to stop treatment, right? When is it time to pull the plug and let you move on? Or are you like me? There is no pulling the plug. You keep me on that sucker. Now, that's what that is. That's what a living will or a directive to physicians is in Texas. A will, on the other hand, is actually your estate plan. This is the thing that will go into place, well, assuming it gets probated, when you die. There's your voice after death saying who gets what, when, where, ideally, and things like that. So those are the two different things between there. But when people talk about estate plan is much more complicated, as you know, than just a will or just a single document like a directive to physicians or a living will. It's all the other things that you're going to need, God forbid, to become incapacitated, like your global statutory power of attorney, your medical power of attorney, your HIPAA disclosure, who can see your medical documents. Again, your directive to physician, when's it time to say we're done here, pull the plug or not? Then you've got your designation of remains, what to do with your body when you're done. You want to be cryogenically frozen, put in the ground, cremated, what? You know, donate to science, whatever you like, but get it taken care of the right way. There's a lot more other things you can also do regarding the estate plan, depending on the size of it, between living trust and revocable versus irrevocable. So it really depends on what the person needs and what they're trying to do. And that's why you always meet with them. The second part was, does a will avoid probate? No, sir, it doesn't avoid. There's really no way of avoiding probate, in my whole opinion, other than just not doing it. And there's very small estates, I guess, can get away with that. Most, you need to at least close out with the government here, and we're done and get things done. It does help with future fraud and things, but the heirs aren't liable for that anyway. It just files up the estate. What a will does, it actually saves the timeline in terms of the process, as long as it was done correctly. You can avoid things like an heirship determination, or having to actually go and find heirs. Everything's already been taken care of, or having to make the court designate an administrator because it wasn't done correctly in the will and things like that. In reality, the cost of a will package, the thing that takes care of you before and then, of course, after death, what you'll pay on that for most places between usually $1,000 to $2,000, big picture, is cheaper than you're going to pay through the process of going through our process in Texas intestate, meaning dying without a will. There's extra things that get involved. So it's really a little bit helps a lot. He's here.
A little planning goes a far way, it sounds like. And then separate from that, is there estate planning where you would avoid probate entirely? In California, we have living trust that gets set up so the property is actually transferred. And that really is going to be a little more planning, a little more fee advance, but you're going to avoid probate entirely, correct?
Entirely is difficult to say. At a minimum, you still want to close out the estate. It basically it limits what goes through probate. It limits how long it'll take. But in reality, it doesn't matter. Your estate could be billions. It's still going to take 3+ months to get the hearing. So
Right.
what it does is restrict how much cost, how much that you've worked for will go to an attorney versus going to the loved ones that you wanted them to go to.
Right.
Or the court costs, and that can get exorbitant too. Especially dependent administration. They're miserable. Nobody wants these.
I love those. Now, we call them limited authority cases. I love them because the attorneys are frustrated, the customers are frustrated, and I can help. And so I look for those. To be honest, my marketing focus is on limited authority, and most agents avoid them, and that's their choice, and that's good for them. But I feel like it gives me a chance to really earn my value with my customers. And so for me, it's the area that I go to. And I'm not saying they're easy, and I'm not saying they're fun or pleasant, but I will say that I create more value for my customers there, and I become invaluable to them in those cases. So it just depends on your business. Katrina, the question.
The more they have to pay, the more unhappy they are. Whether you're killing it, getting everything they wanted, you're explaining the process, you made them aware at the beginning. If they're able to get out of there for 5 or less, they're always a heck of a lot happier than it cost them 10 or more, no matter what happened. It's that whole, it's a balancing. It's tough.
I wouldn't argue with, but I just say I have cases where the customers spend hundreds of thousands of dollars, but if I'm the person that gets them to the finish line or gets the case resolved where they want, I love that personally. Now, I'm not an attorney, so I don't deal with it every day, but when I do get a chance to play in that world, I really have a lot of fun. Okay, Katrina asked a question: should the heirs pay the deceased bills before the property closes or wait until settlement? So I presume Katrina's asking a question. If I don't have access to the heirs' bank accounts and such, should I advance them myself ahead of time and keep track of them and get reimbursed? Or should we let everything sit and wait until the escrow, until I have the authority and then do it at that time? So how do you handle that process or advise that process?
Who's your judge? That's a judge specific. I'm going to go, who's my judge? And I'm not going to know that until I file. Here in Harris County, they don't approve all the expenses that are necessary and normal in this process. It's infuriating. So it could bite you in the butt. And then also, who's going to be the administrator, the executor, who's going to be in charge of it? If you got the ability to give yourself back your money, I'm not that worried. If it's going to be your uncle who don't like you, hell no. I wouldn't front anything. I would wait. So it's more fact specific than that. And I'd really like to know who my judge is and what court we're in, because courts do award different expenses.
Right. I'll say, as a business person, there are times that I advance money for estates, and attorneys might say you shouldn't do that, but it's a business call. If it helps speed the process up, and I can earn the value from the customer by paying for storage or cleanup or whatever, I do that as a business person. And I also have a probate advance inheritance company where we advance money. We know they're going to get the inheritance, and we can advance them $10,000, $20,000 to pay legal fees or expenses and such. And that's part of my job, is to coordinate that with the estate and help them get the best possible outcome. So it depends, but you're right. Putting money, it gives the people who are going to object a little more material to object to, right?
Yeah.
Okay, Harry Patel's got your hand.
In general, I think it's dangerous. I believe in what Thunberg said. As a general rule, money up first, across the board. If you can't afford to lose it, I would recommend not taking that chance then.
Got it. Okay. I'm with you on that. I have a special account, a line of credit just for that, but you're right. You can't be putting up your own personal mortgage payment money or your kids' food money, hoping you get it back. That doesn't make any sense at all. Okay, Harry, I see your hand up. I'm trying to get you to mute and ask your question if you want to live, but maybe not. Let's see. Big figure ahead of the curve. Always send the letters for the mailing addresses. Okay. Yeah, and I think there's a continuous discussion in the chat box about chasing down who the person is in charge of a property, and it's a challenge. But I will say that's the work. The work is finding the person who's going to be in charge and take control and coordinate with them to buy or sell the property. And if you do that, you get paid. And if you don't do that, you don't get paid. And companies can't just sell you that because that really is the work. Mark Peters asked, does the state of Texas recognize lineal kinship or law of consanguinity?
Consanguinity?
There you go. That's why you're an attorney, Bo.
Well, I was trying to see, I don't see the post, but I'm assuming that's what you meant.
It sounds like
bloodline. Yeah.
If I spoke with a Texas accent, that's what I would have said too. The degree of kinship as is recognized here in California. So is that, I guess the question is, in California, we have certain rules of lineage and priority. Is there similar rules that I imagine in Texas and spouse first and kids and such?
Correct. If you don't have a will, we have our own way we'll break it up for you. It's to fit the majority, but that's not good for everybody. So that's why it's always best to make it custom for yourself. And that's what's great about having people like you and me. We can do that for them. But if you don't decide, Texas will. But Texas is unique in a way that we don't have a cheat back to the state. We have what is called the laughing heir statute, or what was seen in that movie, Mr. Deeds by Adam Sandler. It'll go to your third cousin removed and never knew you, and they're laughing to the bank. So in that regard, I think Texas is good. At some point, someone in your family is going to get it.
But so they're not going to necessarily find all the heirs, but whoever speaks up gets paid. Is that what you're saying? In Texas?
No, so they're going to appoint typically an attorney ad litem or something of those, or maybe an amicus, depending on where you are, but typically an AAL. And then they're going to get paid to do research, to go around and find, and whoever they find based on their backgrounds, again, be third cousin removed based on testimony, you name it. And then that person will end up getting the money. Worst case, it'll stay like in the registry of the court, or it'll go to the comptroller. It just sits there, but it doesn't go to the state.
The term you use, a street, is something that happens when the state, at some point in time, if there's nobody who claims the money, it goes back to the state and their general coffers. One of the most famous cases, really one of the finest companies in the history of America, was Hughes Aircraft Company, Howard Hughes. Crazy guy, amazing company. And he died intestate, or I should say there was contest over the will. But he had no, he was unmarried at the time, he had no children. And so he had hundreds of cousins. In order to give them all their share, they ended up really just breaking up this whole conglomerate of amazing companies. And that's DirecTV today is one of those companies, and developments in Las Vegas and California, just amazing. But there's a case of a guy who, and they had, attorneys were out finding heirs, and they're representing the heirs and bringing them into the probate case to get paid. So as Bo said, if you don't have a plan, the state of California has a plan for you. It looks like the Department of Vehicles is just not that customer service oriented. It's not as fun as going to the DMV. And I'll let you make your own assessments of what that sounds like. Okay, let's see here. We got a few more minutes to wrap up here. Can I reach you on? Misha, now I'm unmute. Misha, if you go to probateweekly.com and register, that'll get me my contact info. Or maybe Jesse, if you want to text you my contact info, that'd be fine too. Matt Price, let's have court approval. Okay, so Matt's saying he wouldn't advance money unless he has court approval. Nothing wrong with that. I think it goes both ways, that you can make a business decision to advance money or not, and it's about relationships. If I have an attorney that I can get business from and help make his job a little easier, in one case paying a storage bill for $400 or $500, and I'm getting 3 or 4 cases a year from him, then even if I lost the money, it's not the worst thing in the world. No, I don't want to lose the money. He doesn't ask me to lose the money. He expects me to get paid. But it's a business decision. I think we all have to make our own business decisions. But I would urge real estate agents, look at it as a business. Don't talk about right or wrong. There is no right or wrong. There is what's the right investment for you as a business person. And I would urge anybody in this niche, as a real estate agent or investor, maybe as an attorney, to think about how can I invest my time and or money to build my business and not follow rules just because they're rules. Okay. Yvonne has an interesting question, Bo. If you're not talking about real estate, which is my favorite, but you're talking about personal property, art, jewelry, furs, she's talking about a case in Arizona. IRAs are designated to a beneficiary ahead of time, so that wouldn't count. But personal property, collectibles and such, how does that get handled? Is it handled differently? Is real property or the same? You're muted. I don't think I unmuted you that time. Let's get you unmuted.
Sorry. No, real property has to be handled in the state of where it is, and that's the number one place where I see trust being used when people own property in multiple states. We don't want to have to probate in every dang state and find an attorney in every one of them to get that stuff done. So no, real property we done normally in the county and the state in which it is. You're going to have to typically probate over that unless they did a transfer on death deed or some kind of version like that. But as a general rule, anytime you're dealing with that big B word, that beneficiary, that's usually going to be controlled by contract. So if the will says give Boe my life insurance and the contract with the life insurance says give it to Annie, Annie's going to win that 99% of the time, especially regarding that big B. We want them to mirror each other, but really normally matters in that type of situation for estate planning is going to be the agreement with that third party.
So insurance, IRAs are most common for that. How about personal property? How is personal property different than real estate, or is it different?
Well, they put it in a trust. I mean, it's transferred upon the death or whoever the administrator of the trust, or a transfer on death deed and things like that. But normally when someone dies, depending on the value of the estate, how many debts do they have? We have more than one way to get probate done here. The most common is an independent administration, but we got small estate affidavits. There's times you can do something when you don't have a will, other times that you can't. Monuments of title and things to avoid. A lot of all we're doing is caring about the house. So it really depends again on the estate, what they have, and we usually pick what is, of course, the most efficient and the most cost effective. But as soon as they need letters, I have to go through the court the longer route with at least an independent, and it is what it is.
Vaughn's asking about a case. I've seen this where there's personal property. In this case, she's talking about $5 million. I've seen cases with like collectible coins, baseball cards, guns, things that you could literally put into a car and drive away worth if you access the safe. But technically, well, let me ask you, Boe. I think those things are like a probate, meaning they're the property of the estate until the court determines who's in charge of the estate, and you really can't transfer. If you grab it, it'd be no different than theft.
In my opinion. It is theft. It's larceny. I don't care if the will says you did it. Doesn't mean you're going to in the end. And until that person has the authority to give it to you, any taking from that home at that point, in my opinion, is nothing but theft. And it happens all the time. It infuriates me. It also shows you who really cared about the person. And the ones that are more mourning and trying to take care of the family, no, not the jerk offs are going through and wiping out the house. Well, I was going to get it. Grandma said I get it. No, that's theft. And what really sucks is, and I get it, they hardly ever get in trouble. Because the family members don't want to create a problem, even though they have every right in the world to go and get that stuff back. They don't. And they get away with it over and over and over.
I think you're right. It's hard to prove, too, also what was there, what wasn't there, because there's not records of, furs and collectible coins and baseball cards and such. There's just not really kind of records that a court's going to make a criminal case over, or even a probate case over. Look, Boe, we're coming up on our time here, and I told you we keep it no longer than an hour. I really appreciate so much. Number one, I appreciate our relationship. We've grown here over the last few months, and I appreciate you and Lena both in our Probate Experts Facebook group. You guys are so generous to answer questions there, being on call here today. So Boe Bowen is the managing partner of the Bowen Law Firm. And phone number there, if you want to go to the website, it's bowenlf.com is the website. And there's a phone number if you want to call their firm. They're in Houston, Texas. They're exclusively Texas. 713-574-7777. And they have offices in Houston. And their office hours, they have all kinds of information on the website, very informative, great staff, great people. If you have questions in the state of Texas, particularly in the Houston area, talk to Boe. Luckily, if you're really lucky, Bo's not available and you'll get Lena. I'm just kidding. You'll get Lena, she's a great gal. She's a great gal.
Beautiful and smart. She doesn't come any better than Lena. I tell you, I'm very lucky. I like
making fun of Boe. He's an easy target. So again, Boe, thank you for your time today. I really appreciate it. And for all those you guys who ask questions, we have so many of them, and we ran out of time. I really appreciate your questions. Go into the Facebook group Probate Experts and feel free to ask questions there. And again, Texas specific, I know Boe and Orlena will jump in and answer them there. I'll try to answer them all there as well. Thank you so much. We do this every Thursday, 4 p.m. Pacific, 7 p.m. Eastern. You can come on the Zoom if you register at probateweekly.com. We live stream it to YouTube and to Facebook, and you can also subscribe on YouTube and get them every time we upload. Thanks so much, everybody. Make it